The reprinting of staple cards is going to be an extremely important part of the long-term success of Flesh and Blood. Now, the majority of discussion around this topic has been around high-value cards like CNC and E-Strike. And this does make sense from a community standpoint after all. They want more copies and they want the price to come down. And while that's completely valid, unfortunately the discussion around the monetary portion of reprints is often what dominates the conversation. Instead, why I'm so passionate about the need for reprints isn't the financial side as much as is the gameplay side of things. As a non-rotating format game, Fab is extremely susceptible to a phenomenon known as wide creep. Utilizing reprints as opposed to creating new and different cards that do similar effects is a very, very effective tool in maintaining the overall game balance and health. So today we're discussing what I mean by all of that, why reprints are so very important, and some of my top picks from the WTR, Arcane Rising, and CRU block for reprints. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, Fab folks, and welcome back to Dice Commando and Go Again, a fabulous cast. Thank you so much for being here, and hey guys, happy Mardi Gras. So I spent 8 years down in New Orleans, and Carnival season always holds a special place in my heart. And you know what? We're shooting a video on Mardi Gras, so let's do the beads, baby. So whether you're down there or not, as we say, happy Mardi. Now, also, it's kind of been a spell. Happy to be back. I was on solo parent duty last weekend, so not a lot of time for videos. But we're back, baby. And tonight we are talking the importance of reprints. Now, today's video is sponsored by our friends over at FabDB, which is, as you guys well know, the hands-down best resource for us players on all of the interwebs. So head on over there and check out all the features like deck building, collection management, and while you're there, consider upgrading your account to unlock additional features. So big thank you to our friends over at FabDB. Now, in a recent interview on the Instant Speed podcast, James White essentially confirmed that the reprints are coming. And the community response was, as you can imagine, yeah, CNC, right? And to be clear, that's fair, right? I get it. But I think that a lot of the overall upside of and point of that is being missed, because in games like Flesh and Blood, there are certain cards that really fill a particular role, right? These cards cannot really be designed better for what they do. In essence, these cards are kind of as good as they can get. And a good example that comes to mind here, and will actually be the case study that I want to use for the first part of tonight's discussion, is Razor Reflex. So this card establishes really the fundamental curve, if you will, for what this type of card does, right? It's the red 1 for 3, right? We're all well familiar with the red 1 for 3. And Razor Reflex has played no small part in the establishment of that. Now, printing a new but different card that has a similar function, at worst, leads to direct or strictly better power creep, and at best causes what is known as wide creep, right? Most of you guys are familiar with the term strictly better, which just means, right, Razor Reflex, red Razor Reflex being a red 1-3, a strictly better might be a red 1 for 4. Or, with Razor Reflex, it could be, a new card that says, instead of just dagger or sword, maybe it's and axes and blah, 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 blah. But then you lead into what is called wide creep, with the second example I just used, right? Wide creep is an indirect type of power creep that occurs from the ever-expanding card pool, right? So it's not so much a vertical creep, but it's an inclusivity creep, right? Because you have more options. As cards of similar function are added, decks have increased options and thus more reliability and repeatability. And in many cases, the ability to, from an effective standpoint, run multiple copies of the same card, right? Like the example that I just mentioned, let's say they do, we've been waiting for an Axe card forever, right? So let's say they create Axe Reflex or something like that, which instead of saying, instead of being a razor specific for axes, maybe just says 1 for 3 target weapon attack react, right? Well, now you could run 6 copies of Razor Reflex effectively, right? Because it's different. It's a different card, right? So that's more where we're going here in terms of the wide creep, right? Imagine if another card's printed that does essentially the same thing. Now that decks want to now decks that want to run that card can effectively run 6 or more copies of that card. And now, sure, maybe those cards don't exactly read or work exactly the same, but from a functional standpoint, someone out there somehow will be able to take advantage of more copies of said card. Now, in Flesh and Blood, as a non-rotating game, they're very, very susceptible to this type of creep if they continue to add cards. I mean, it just makes sense. Like, so let's throw it out there. Imagine, for example, let's say a couple years down the road when someone like a Cheerios Briar, right, has access to multiple Scarfera Scars or multiple Ravenous Rabble variants. Sure, they'll be worded slightly different. Maybe they have a different title and do something effectively different. But fundamentally, they'll be the same card, right? And this is a thought experiment, right? But what if you could just run all cards that had red go again, right? I mean, we've seen what something like that can do, and it can only get better. You know what I mean? And another example of kind of the path to wide creep, and this isn't directly wide creep, but it's starting to get there, right? What we saw in the last set in Everfest, was Into the Swing, right? Into the Swing was basically an Iron Song response where you traded the reprise requirement for the requirement of being on the second swing. But what if, there are plenty of design variants you could do there, right? What if in the future there's a 2-hand only option? What if there's a 1-hand only option? What if they, in the future, do a front swing specific variant where you could only use it on your first swing? And sure, the impact itself, at some point, you can only fit so many cards in your deck. I get it. Right? But now, instead of like, oh man, think about it in the past, you're like, okay, I want to run Iron Song, so I'm going to run red Iron Song and yellow Iron Song. Well, now you can run red Iron Song and red in the swing. And well, maybe now instead of having that other one, you can run the red front pump version and so on, right? You start to see, even though the cards themselves are not more powerful than the last card, the deck itself has more options and is able to still elevate the deck as itself because it has more of what it needs at the time that it needs. And then, so sure, I was just talking the 0 for 3 reacts for Warrior, but now what I want to do is I actually want to consider the better in blue aspect of this game. Those cards out there, like let's say a Hit and Run or a Mavrian Skies, for example, that seem to be played primarily for their effect versus their power, and thus tend to be better as in the blue pitch, right, because it gives you more resources. So in many cases, people play the yellow and the blue, right? Mavrian Sky is a great example, and Hit and Run as well. People play the yellow and the blue because they want the effect, but they want multiple instances of that. But now imagine if down the road, similar cards are printed, and you can throw out those yellow Hit and Runs or throw out the yellow Mavrians and instead run, blue Mavrian and blue Mavrian too, right? Again, it's pretty simple stuff. So again, I think I've painted the picture as to why reprints are important, because as you add these different cards, if the need is felt to continue to add different cards, you are creating creep in its own way, right? By making not the cards themselves better, but by making the availability to the decks better. Okay, so I painted the picture, great. There's a problem, though, because in core sets, where we're going to be drafting, a certain number of the core cards, the fundamental cards, whatever, are inevitably going to be needed to successfully support draft, right? And unless it's something that basically is its own contained module, such as we saw like in Tales of Aria, you still need your fundamental cards. And this is where the risk really comes. And the solution to that is utilizing reprints, right? Reprinting staples in future sets, especially the commons and the rares, can support the needs of draft while also protecting the constructed formats, and while to a certain degree also protecting the collectors, right? And that's why I specifically refer back to the Majestics are not immune from this at all. But by and large, you should be looking at like commons. That's what I'm looking at in this way anyway. Is your commons and rares as high candidates for reprints, because, look at Sink Below or Fate Foreseen, right? Which we'll talk about. So anyway, kind of the conclusion here, I get it. Designing new and powerful cards is fun. It's exciting. And for the first like 10 to 15 minutes when we see it in spoiler season, we're like, oh my God, this is so amazing, right? But it can be damaging to the game in the long run if that type of stuff isn't kept in control. Right, so what I wanted to do just real quick, and then we'll get out of here, was just kind of run down my list of cards that I think are staples that should be reprinted and actually pose a potential danger to the game if we go the wide creep route, right? We create something else that's similar. Now, number 0 on this one, yes, I'll throw it out there, is CNC, right? And I get it. Very, very popular one. I already spoke to that well before. It's not about the money part. It's about the fact that Command & Conquer is an insane... That's why Command & Conquer is what it is. Command & Conquer is an insanely good card, right? If they create another Command & Conquer instead of reprinting Command & Conquer, that is just straight... Like, the only way they're going to make it better is to make it way better, right? And, like, I don't know that that's a good thing for the game, right? So that's kind of where my mindset is on that one, is like, you know, do I want to see it? Do I want to see it come out again so more people can get their hands on it? Yes. I also want to see it come out again because I sure as hell don't want to see CNC V2, right? It's scary AF. Next is Fate Foreseen and Sink Below. I think both of these are excellent candidates. Sink Below especially, I think, is a great candidate for a reprint, primarily because I don't want to see another 0-4 defense, 0-4 red defense react, right? I'd like to see more variants, maybe more class type stuff, get specific in that. But for every generic red 0-4 we print, you up the curve. Now, again, I get it. You can still only run, so you only have so many cards in your deck. You can only run so many. Defense reacts, by and large, don't win you the game, right? So I get it. But do we really need another 0-4 when we could just reprint one of these that works exceedingly well? I think that's the angle we should take. Next, cards I already spoke to, Scar for Scar and Ravenous Rabble. I think these are both very, very good cards. Sure, there are umpteen million variants that someone could sit and theory craft on what could come out, but don't these cards just work well? And, you know, the more 0-4s with some sort of, I mean, especially Rabble. Rabble's just got built-in Go Again. Scar and Scar has kind of has Go Again, but in the right situation, so I get it. But those are good cards. Like, they're well-designed cards. They do what you need them to do, but we don't need more of them. Okay, that's what I see. Next is Razor, Reflex, and Pummel. I don't think these, like, I think these cards need reprinted. I sure as hell don't want to see more options of Pummel. Can you imagine, like, these Anathos Hammer builds with, like, multiple iterations of Terra Asunder and Pummel? Like, that's just freaking gross, man. Now, the exception, the bone I want to throw on this one is, yes, there's an exception here that I would like to add variants for other weapon types. That's certainly, I mean, I think it's pretty safe to say at some point in the full life of Fab that's going to happen. But the key here will be like on something like Razor Reflex, right? What you want is for it to be specific to for both of these, you want them to be specific to the different weapon types, right? Instead of having, another card that comes out that says dagger or sword or axe, you want it to be specifically for maybe axe and flail, or flail does seem like it'd be more up the Pummel alley. But you guys get what I'm saying, right? Adding these more cards, it needs to be specific so that you can't basically double dip Razor Reflex with this new card, right? In that case, I'm okay with it. If we just get more Razor Reflexes or more Pummels, I think that's a problem. Next, we have Unmovable. Like, this card's really, really good. Everybody's running the snot out of this card and has been for a while. We don't necessarily, sure, you could have one. So, Unmovable's got its thing from Arsenal. Again, there are plenty of design routes you could go there to make a card different. But the question is, do we need that? Do we need people to have multiple of these type of defense reactions? And I get it. I have Unmovable on here. I have Sink and Fade on here. Andrew must have a hard-on for defense reactions. Yeah, kind of do, right? But I get it. You can still only run so many. But do we really need multiple Unmovables there for just the sideboard options? Maybe we do. As decks continue to get stronger, maybe we do. But I just think that, keeping it solid so that you're only running, could you imagine, again, Anathos builds with these, running all sorts of just D-reacts with big swings and pummels? mean, I don't know, that actually sounds pretty cool. But at some point, like, you guys see what I'm saying, you can't just have 9 versions of the same effective card. Right, and last, this is kind of a throwback to WTR. I would really like to see this sequence get reprinted, and it's maybe not so Nimbleism and Nimble Strike. Nimbleism is just Nimbleism is like the fundamental 0-3 pump card for your actions, right? Everything that we've seen, well, many cards that we've seen since then, we've been like, oh, this is just a better Nimbleism for this class, like Seek and Destroy or other stuff like that. We've seen plenty of cards like that. Actually, most of them for Ranger, to be fair. We just got the new Glide Path, which is the Opti-Opt one, right? But Nimbleism is, like, do we really need another Nimbleism? I don't think we do. I mean, we kind of already did to a certain extent with the Minnowism, the Go Small combo, which is fine because that kind of worked in of itself. And maybe that's to my end, is I don't really have a problem with a new sequence itself, right? Like, Nimbleism into Nimble Strike I think is really cool. The Go Small combo is really, really cool. It's actually kind of like a build archetype you can go around. I love stuff like that. I think it's really good for the health of the game. But at some point, do we really need more, right? And then at some point, does somebody get bored and say, well, there's too many 0-3s, let's make a 0-4 pump, right? And I mean, again, I think you guys get it. So that's just kind of, that list is not like it's not like me sitting here and saying, like, these are the ones that must be reprinted. They're certainly as heck the ones I'd like to see reprinted, but not because I want to see them reprinted as much. I could always use more copies of Fate for Scene and Sync below, by the way. But it's not that I want to see those cards reprinted as much as I don't want to see other cards printed that do their thing, because, again, we don't rotate, right? So that's really right. And again, just to reiterate, I get it. Designing new and more powerful stuff is fun for designers. It is. It's exciting for us as players, right? But it can doing the fun thing in making new cards is going to be a very defining make or break part of this game, right? I mean, obviously, as time goes on, things will creep. There's no question about that. The question is, how fast do we creep? And I firmly believe that utilizing reprints intelligently not only helps the player base, while basically, if done smartly, insulating the collectors, but also helps protect the game and make it as good as it can be for as long as it possibly can be. So anyway, that's my take on it tonight. I would love to hear your guys' feedback. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What other cards do you think should be reprinted? I mean, there's tons out there that really, kind of fill a niche. And, well, actually, cards that fill a niche are the ones that would be, for the most part, okay to reprint, right? Things that are specific, you can not reprint, do something different on, because if I fit directly into this slot, we could find something that fits in this slot. That's a great place to explore from design. Making 9 copies of Scar for a Scar, that's dangerous territory, right? So that's my line of thought. But again, let me know if you agree or disagree. Let me know your thoughts. So I just want to remind everybody, when you're going to pick up your singles, my buddy Travis over at Fab Foundry, he's got a great source on there. You can use the link below at checkout to basically give me a little kickback from that. Much appreciated. Helps me keep my stuff on. I actually just bought some singles last week, some shiny singles. They look. Read the Glide Path is a beautiful, beautiful foil, I gotta say that. That's just a common. So, and then again, Gongai games we were playing every Saturday night. We finally got a line on both of our February and March kits, finally. So we got those coming, very, very exciting. So hope to see you guys out there once everybody gets, done smashing everybody else in the face on the PTQ season. So anyway, I hope to see you guys, and thank you very much for tuning in. Again, let me know what you guys are thinking in the comments. If nothing else, folks, go Commando.